that you haven't been told. And so this is deep. When you get this information, it's gonna be buckle in. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Get over there to Patreon family. And so yeah, we got to talk about this because a lot of people, and this is when we don't do what we supposed. When we don't do what we supposed to do, and we allow uh you allow the wound to fester, you know, the scar and is deep, and it begins to fester, and you don't deal with it. So after so long, the cancer is throughout the body. You had to deal when you had. That's why you had to be on top of shit. So when it happened the first time, you get right to it. You get right to cleansing and detoxing and purifying, getting it up out of there, get the parasites out of your body, But, far too long, people who are fantasize about Islam, and want to intertwine with the invaders and want to claim to eventually be the invader. Now you got Negroes talking about they the Arab, and they the original Arab, and we understand, where we were originally the people that built the civilizations of those areas, but that's not what we are. We were civilized. We were builders of civilization. The Arab is a goat herder. That's what he is. That's what he is. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself, and that's what's wrong with y'all. If y'all would put him in his place, you could put the Quran in its place. But because y'all glorify, you understand what I'm saying? And know damn well that the Arab, even that Muhammad, they were still nothing but dusty tribes out there in the middle of the desert, riding on camels and selling, was really trading. But they got that from African people. That aspect of it, I understand. The trading aspect, moving back and forth between the great civilizations on camelback or whatever other animal, which the camel most definitely is, the Mercedes Benz of the desert. You know what I'm saying? So if you gonna move across it, you better have your camel because they built for that. But let me make sure this. Yeah, they built for that. But anyway, you we you got so many people who want to be a part of this Arab race. They want to be a part of it, and they many times they condone the actions of these Arabs. You see, they condone the actions of these Arabs, and you say, "Oh, we were the original Arabs. We are the original Muslims. We were the original," and but don't never speak up to the atrocities that are going on in Africa right now, all over Africa, where they're committing all type of genocidal atrocities on African people. You see, and nobody speaks up. You don't even hear about it. You see, I say I'm gonna take my time to make sure that I make a segment of all type of political actions that are happening on the continent in conjunction with jihadist Islam. You see, jihadist Islam and what it's doing to the continent and what they doing over here. Many of these niggas over here pacifists. All you had to do was give them a couple of incense and give them a bean pie, give them some books and shit, and where it say that but it don't change nothing about the wars they're going. They don't care about that. Them jihadists over there, the books that you niggas read over here about Islam, they'll burn that. They don't care about nothing about, these jihadists is very strict on their belief system. So they'll set this shit you read, they'll set that on fire. They don't care nothing about that. They consider you an infidel. They don't consider you a Muslim. Do you understand that? They over in Africa burning other. They set fire to mosque. They set fire to they set fire to Qurans. that are not of they they belief, they, they got their own specialized Quran. So if it ain't one of their Quran, they set that on fire. You know what I'm saying? That's haram. That's, that's not accepted by Muslim, the jihadists. So, and then you got other jihadists that don't agree with other jihadists. But what's really being destructive in Africa right now are the jihadists. They even attacking some of them soft, what they consider them soft Arabs. They didn't got to hold the African land and resources, so they living way better than the ones over there, in many areas in Arabia. Arabia just got up on its feet. Arabia just got up on its feet, but a lot of them was, the African nations was living well. They was sucking in resources and still sucking in resources. So they looked at, and they didn't want to go home, and then they didn't want to share with their Arab brothers, and so a lot of the ones in Africa was looked down on. You see, they looked down on a lot of the Arabs in Africa. You see, and so we have to understand that Islam is killing Africa, along with the white man too. But Islam is killing Africa. It is killing Africa every day. You just looked up in Mali, they just had a coup, attempted coups all over, but by jihadists. You see, and so if people don't step up, and this is go for moderate Islam, moderate Islam can be in, they can live in unison with the Christian, even though I'm not saying that but I can, we have to take one step at a time. We're talking about moderate African Muslims that still have African consciousness and culture, and they can exist with a African Christian. They can exist with some of their indigenous culture without being destructive. They're gonna have to band together. And get jihadist Islam out of Africa. So that means the moderate Muslims is gonna have to band together to fight the jihadist Muslims. The Arab, and really, when we talk about Africa, the Arabs has got to go, because they the one that putting them battery packs in the backs of those jihadists. That's the particular form of Islam. They are Al Qaeda affiliates. They are ISIS affiliates. That's what they are. They're ISIS and Al Qaeda affiliates, and these are Arab jihadist institutions that have a very radical and strict belief. And if you don't fall up under that, you can pray 7 times a day. They don't care. They'll catch you with your head to the ground and blow it out of there. You know what I'm saying? They don't care about you. They don't care about your mosque. They destroy mosques. They consider them fake mosques, that they're not official, they're not ordained by Allah mosques. You see? So you got to understand that. You have to understand that, family. And it might be, thank you, family. You might not understand that. Thank you, family, for for your kind word. Yeah, they don't. You got to understand that. You got to run them up out of there. You got to run them up out of there, man. That's all it is to it. Before it's too late. Yeah, before it's too late. And understand who putting that power pack in their back. Them Arabs, them up there, and sometimes they turn on them. You know, that sometimes they turn on them. So when the ISIL left up out of Iraq, they knew home base is now in Africa. You see, Al Qaeda got, that's like they base in the Sahel, where they go and create and try to find a new capital in Africa. And we have to do everything in our power to not let that happen. We got to do everything in our power to not let that happen. So this is, to let moderate Muslims know, and the Muslims over here, they don't give a damn about you. They'll set fire to your ass. They'll set fire to your ass. So the Islam, thank you, fam. Yeah. They'll set fire to your ass over here. So know that, just know that they're you are no different than a Christian or some, what they call pagan infidel. So Don't ever think that, you know, you being soft on what's going on over there in Africa, and many of them do. And that's a shame because a lot of them got, you know, these jihadists, even these ones over, even in the Nation of Islam. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. They talk highly of some of them nations over there, even though they know they got that radical Islam that, you know, they don't even accept the Nation of Islam. Shit. Let's keep it 1,000. And you say you don't, you're not, we ain't looking to be accepted. Well, goddamn it, why you call it Islam then? You so big and bad. We the original. Man, always we the original. Nigga, your book's got a publishing date on it. And if it was the original, why it ain't older than the Quran? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But anyway, family, we got to talk to our family out there and let them know that the radical Islam is gonna knock them off if they don't get their shit together. You could be a Muslim, you can be whatever you want. That they do not respect you at all. They don't respect Africa. They are trying to destroy Africa. Don't let these Muslims lie to you and tell you, oh, this. No, do not fantasize about Islam. Islam is killing Africa today. Yeah. Islam is killing Africa. Period. We got to speak up, family. We got to speak up. But thank you for being in the house. We got a couple more live streams on deck. I want y'all to get in here because we're gonna talk about this one radical in Egypt talking about blowing up the pyramids. And you got to understand this is serious. This is serious. And you want to let Iran get a nuclear bomb? You got to be crazy as hell. You got to be crazy. But come on, Black family. Before we get up off here, make sure you get on over there to Patreon. Secret genetic experiments, human animal hybrids. And a lot of them got on turbans right now today. I want you to know that. Get with me, family. This is General Seti. Hit that subscribe button. Give the video a thumbs up, like it because you love it. Share it with your family and friends. And I'll be right back. Black Power.